The massive space station called Concordia Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most moons and held the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Today, they were all very worried. Speaker Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the center of the Great Hall. His blue skin glowed with anger as he looked at the reports on his screen. His forearms moved quickly as he read each piece of bad news. 47 star systems, he said to the other council members. These humans have taken 47 systems in just 6 months. How is this possible? Around the circular table sat the leaders of the 7 most powerful species in the galaxy. They had ruled together for 3,000 years. No one had ever challenged them before. Now a new species was taking their space without asking permission. Kethrun of the Varanti hegemony slammed his massive fist on the table. His red eyes burned with rage. We should destroy them now. Send our fleets and end this problem quickly. Wait, said the crystal being known as Prime Node 7. We know very little about these humans. They came from nowhere. Their ships use technology we do not understand. We must be careful. Veltar nodded slowly. The Crystal Collective was always wise to listen to. You are right. We will call them here for negotiations. They will see our power and submit like all the others. The other council members agreed. In 3,000 years, every new species had done the same thing. They would arrive at Concordia Prime, see the massive fleets and advanced technology, then beg to join the council as junior members. The humans would be no different. 3 days later, a human ship appeared at the edge of the system. It was smaller than most council ships but moved in a strange way. The ship called itself the Defiance, which made some council members laugh. What could these primitive beings possibly defy? Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim stepped off his ship and looked around the docking bay. He was tall for a human with black hair and calm brown eyes. Behind him walked his team. So Young Park carried a data pad and smiled politely at everyone. Dongmin Lee wore what looked like a military uniform but carried no visible weapons. The council had prepared a special welcome. Holographic displays showed the size of their fleets. Massive screens displayed their conquered worlds. Guard robots twice the size of humans lined the walkways. Everything was designed to make new species feel small and helpless. Hyunwoo looked at everything but showed no fear. He nodded to his team and walked calmly toward the Great Hall. So Young whispered something to him and he smiled slightly. When they entered the Great Hall, the council members expected to see the usual reaction. New species always stopped walking and stared with open mouths. They would whisper to each other about how powerful the council was. Some would even fall to their knees. The humans did none of these things. They walked to the center of the hall and stood quietly. Hyunwoo looked around the table, meeting each council member's eyes directly. This was already unusual. Most species were too afraid to look at council members. Welcome, Speaker Veltar said in his most commanding voice. You stand before the Galactic Council, rulers of this galaxy for 3 millennia. We have called you here to discuss your recent expansion. Hyunwoo bowed his head slightly. Thank you for meeting with us. I am Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim, representing the United Earth Alliance and our colonial settlements. Your settlements are in our space, Kethrun growled. You have taken systems that belong to council members. This cannot continue. The human ambassador reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. So Young activated her datapad, and suddenly holographic star maps filled the air above the table. The council members looked surprised. How had these humans gotten past their security systems? I think there has been a misunderstanding, Hyunwoo said calmly. We are not here to ask for permission to settle these systems. We are here to inform you that we have established what we call the human sphere of influence. 47 systems are now under human protection. The hall became very quiet. Council members looked at each other with confusion. No species had ever spoken to them like this. They always asked for permission. They always begged for acceptance. Prime Node 7's crystal body flashed different colors. You speak as if you are our equals. This is not how first contact works. You should be asking to join our civilization. Dongmin Lee stepped forward slightly. With respect, we have studied your civilization carefully. We have decided that we prefer our independence. Veltar's blue skin turned darker. Studied us? How? You have only been in space for a few decades. So Young touched her datapad and new images appeared. Pictures of species the council had conquered long ago. Pictures of their worlds under council rule. Pictures of beings working in council mines and factories. We did not study you directly, Hyunwoo explained. We studied the species you have conquered. Many of them were happy to tell us about council methods. They taught us your languages, your technology, your weaknesses. The council members sat in shocked silence. No one had ever contacted their subject species before. Those beings were kept under careful control. How had the humans even found them? The Kelfari taught us about your energy weapons, So Young said, reading from her datapad. The Nexari showed us your ship designs. The Threx explained your military tactics. They all had very interesting stories about council rule. Kethrun stood up suddenly. His massive form towered over the humans, but they did not step back. Those species belong to us. They have no right to speak to outsiders. They belong to themselves, Yunwu said quietly. That is why we are here. We are establishing the human sphere not just for humans, but for any species that wants to be free. The word free hung in the air like a challenge. The council had never heard a new species use that word before. Freedom was not something they offered. They offered protection, order, and stability in exchange for obedience. Veltar tried to regain control of the situation. You are being foolish. You cannot stand against the combined fleets of the council. We have millions of ships and the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Hyunwoo smiled for the first time since entering the hall. We know exactly how many ships you have. We know where they are stationed and what weapons they carry. We also know something else. He paused and looked around the table again. We know that most of your empire exists because people are afraid to fight you. But we are not afraid. The council members felt something they had not experienced in 3,000 years. For the first time since they had become the rulers of the galaxy, they were not sure what would happen next. Dongmin Li checked his watch and nodded to his ambassador. The negotiations will begin now, Hyunwoo announced. But understand this, we are not here to surrender. We are here to change everything. Kethrun of the Voranti hegemony decided he had heard enough. These humans needed to understand their place in the galaxy. He activated the Great Hall's main display system and filled the air with images of council military power. Look around you, humans, he said in his deep, threatening voice. See what happens to species that challenge the council. The holographic displays showed massive fleets of warships. Dreadnoughts longer than human cities floated in perfect formation. Energy weapons that could destroy planets charged with deadly light. Battle stations the size of moons moved through space like giant metal worlds. The hegemony alone has 12,000 warships. Kethrun continued. The entire council commands over 50,000 vessels. Each one could destroy your entire homeworld with a single shot. The other council members nodded approvingly. This was how things always went. Show the new species your power, and they quickly became much more reasonable. Usually their leaders would start asking for mercy at this point, but Hyunwoo Kim just stood quietly and watched the display. When it finished, he turned to his team. So Young, please show them File 7. So Young Park touched her datapad, and suddenly the humans' own images appeared in the air. But these were not pictures of human ships. Instead, they showed detailed plans of every vessel the council had just displayed. Your hegemony-class dreadnoughts, Dongmin Li said calmly, pointing at the holographic ships. Shield generators located on the lower hull, protected by 40 centimeters of ablative armor. But there is a gap in the shielding where the power conduits connect. A small explosive device placed there would cause a complete system failure. Kethrun's red eyes widened. Those technical details were classified at the highest levels. Even most Voranti military officers did not know about the shield gap. So Young continued the presentation. Zephyrian battlecruisers have excellent energy weapons, but their cooling systems cannot handle sustained fire for more than 12 minutes. After that, they must shut down weapons for at least 4 minutes to prevent overheating. Speaker Veltar stood up quickly. How do you know this? These are military secrets. The Nexari built your cooling systems, Hyunwoo explained. Before you conquered them, they were the best engineers in the galaxy. They still remember how everything works. More images appeared. Crystal Collective hive ships, Aquatic Federation deep space vessels, all with their weaknesses clearly marked. The humans had not just studied council technology, they had learned how to defeat it. This is impossible, Prime Node 7 flashed in angry colors. Our subject species do not have access to this information. Dongmin Li smiled slightly. Your subject species built most of your technology. They mine the materials, construct the components, and maintain the systems. They know everything because they do all the actual work. A new voice spoke from the back of the human group. May I introduce myself? Everyone turned to see a woman stepping forward. She had been so quiet that the council members had almost forgotten she was there. She bowed politely. "I am HFY, Intelligence Coordination. I have some additional information you might find interesting." HFY activated her own device and the holographic display changed again. This time it showed something that made every council member feel cold with fear. The images were of their homeworlds. Zephyria Prime, HFY said, pointing to a blue and silver planet. Population 4 billion. Primary defense orbital weapons platforms in high orbit. Weakness. All platforms are controlled from a single command center in the capital city. More planets appeared. Voranti, the hegemony homeworld. Massive ground-based shields protect the major cities, but the shield generators are located in unprotected valleys outside each city. The Crystal Collective's central node is protected by an asteroid field, she continued, but the asteroids follow predictable orbital patterns. A small force could navigate through them if they knew the timing. Council members began speaking urgently to each other in their own languages. How could these humans possibly know such detailed information about their most protected worlds? "Your intelligence networks have been compromised," HFY said simply. "Every species you have conquered still has people working in sensitive positions. They have been watching and learning for generations. When we asked for information, they were happy to share it." Veltar's forearm shook with rage. "You are threatening us." "This is an act of war." "No," Hyunwoo said calmly. "This is an act of preparation. We came here hoping for peaceful negotiations. But we are not naive. We know exactly what we are facing." Another human stepped forward. He was younger than the others, with kind eyes that seemed strange in this hall of warriors and politicians. "I am Min Ho-yoon," he said. "I study alien biology and culture. I have spent the last 2 years living with 12 different species that you call your subjects. I learned their languages, ate their food, and heard their stories." Min Ho looked around the table sadly. "Do you know what the Kelfari call the day you conquered them? They call it the day the stars went dark. The Nexari have a saying. Before the council came, we built things for ourselves. Now we build things for our masters. They are our subjects," Kethrun growled. "We protect them. We give them order and stability. You give them slavery," Min Ho replied, "and they remember what freedom was like. They told me stories about their histories, their cultures, their dreams. They also told me something else." He paused and looked directly at each council member. "They told me they have been waiting for someone strong enough to help them fight back. They have been preparing for this day for centuries." The hall became very quiet again. The council members were beginning to understand that this was not a normal first contact situation. These humans had not come to surrender or ask for protection. They had come as allies of the council's own subjects. "This is still impossible," Prime Node 7 flashed. "Even if you know our weaknesses, you are just one species. We are 7 of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy." So Young looked at her datapad and smiled. "Actually, we are not just one species anymore. Would you like to see our current alliance membership?" New images filled the air. Star charts showing not just the 47 human systems, but dozens more marked with different colors. The Free Kelfari Republics, 18 systems. So Young read. The Nexari Engineering Collective, 22 systems. The Threx Liberation Front, 31 systems. The Independent Aquatic Worlds, 15 systems. The numbers kept growing, system after system, all marked as allies of the human sphere. The council members realized with growing horror that their subjects had not just been talking to the humans. They had been organizing. "Over 200 star systems are now part of our alliance," Hyunwoo announced. "And more join us every day. Your former subjects are declaring their independence and we are helping them defend it." Kethrun slammed his fist on the table again. "We will destroy all of you. Our fleets will burn every rebel world." Dongmin Lee checked his watch again. "Your fleets are going to be very busy. In fact, they already are." As if summoned by his words, alarms began ringing throughout Concordia Prime. Emergency lights flashed red and yellow. Council members received urgent messages on their personal communicators. The humans stood calmly in the center of the chaos, watching as the most powerful beings in the galaxy began to panic. The negotiation was just beginning, but the war had already started. The alarms continued to ring throughout Concordia Prime, as council members frantically tried to contact their homeworlds. Red warning lights flashed in the Great Hall, casting strange shadows on the faces of both aliens and humans. Speaker Veltar pressed his hand to his communication device, his blue skin growing pale as he listened to reports. Around the table, other council members were having similar conversations. Their voices grew louder and more worried with each passing moment. "Silence," Veltar finally shouted, and the alarm stopped. The hall became quiet except for the soft humming of the station's systems. "What have you done?" Ambassador Hyunwoo Kim stood calmly in the center of the chaos. His team remained perfectly composed, as if emergency alarms were a normal part of diplomatic meetings. "We have done nothing aggressive," Hyunwoo said, "but our allies have been busy while we talked. Perhaps now you will be more interested in serious negotiations." He gestured to So Young Park, who activated her datapad once again. This time, the holographic display showed real-time tactical information from across the galaxy. "The Free Kelfari Republics have blockaded the Zephyrian trade routes in the outer spiral," So Young announced. "No council ships are being attacked, but all cargo vessels are being turned away." More information appeared on the display. "The Nexari Engineering Collective has gone on strike in the Varanti shipyards. All construction and maintenance has stopped. The Threx Liberation Front has seized control of the crystal mining operations in the Beta sector." Kethrun stood up so quickly that his chair fell over. "This is war. You cannot do this." "Actually, we can," said a new voice from the human group. A woman stepped forward and bowed politely. "I am Jae Young Seo, diplomatic recorder. I have been documenting everything that has happened in this hall today." She held up a small device that glowed softly. "According to galactic law, any species has the right to withdraw from agreements they did not freely make. The Kelfari, Nexari, Threx, and other species were conquered by force. They never agreed to council rule. They have been our subjects for centuries," Veltar protested. "They are part of council space now. They are sentient beings with the right to choose their own government," Jae Young replied calmly. "We have simply reminded them that they have this choice." Prime Node 7 flashed angry colors. "You are destroying the order that has kept peace in this galaxy for 3,000 years. "Peace for whom?" asked Min Ho-yoon. "The Kelfari told me about the rebellion on their fourth world. 2 million people died when your fleets bombarded their cities. The Nexari showed me the mass graves where you buried the engineers who refused to build your weapons. That was necessary for stability," the crystal being replied. "Sometimes force must be used to maintain order. Then you understand why we are prepared to use force to restore freedom," Hyunwoo said. He walked closer to the council table, and for the first time his calm expression became serious. "We did not come here to destroy anything. We came to offer you a choice. You can accept change or you can be changed by force." So Young activated another display. This one showed a formal document with official seals and signatures. "The human sphere presents the following terms for galactic peace," Hyunwoo announced. "First, immediate independence for all species currently under council protection who wish to be free. Second, establishment of free trade zones where all species can conduct business without council interference. Third, recognition of human sovereignty over our claimed territories and those of our allies." The council members stared at the document in shock. No one had ever made demands of the council before. For 3,000 years they had been the ones who decided what happened in the galaxy. "This is ridiculous," Veltar laughed, but his laugh sounded nervous. "You have 6 ships here. We have the largest military force in galactic history. You cannot possibly think we will agree to these terms." 6 ships here, Dongmin Lee corrected, "but not 6 ships total." Era Choi stepped forward again. "Would you like to know where the rest of our fleet is right now?" Before anyone could answer, she activated her own display. The holographic map of the galaxy appeared again, but this time it showed moving dots of light. Hundreds of them, all moving toward specific targets. "Human Task Force Alpha is currently approaching the Zephyrian home system," Era announced. "Task Force Beta is en route to Varanti space. Task Forces Gamma through Theta are moving toward the homeworlds of the other council members." The council members felt their blood turn cold. While they had been meeting here, thinking they were negotiating with a small group of primitives, the humans had been positioning their entire fleet for a coordinated attack. "This is impossible," Kethrun said, but his voice was quieter now. "Our early warning systems would have detected large fleets moving through our space. Your early warning systems were designed to watch for enemy fleets," Dongmin explained. "But our ships have been moving through neutral space and the territories of our allies. We have been planning this operation for months. And you have been helping us," added a new voice. Another human woman stepped forward. She had been so quiet that most council members had forgotten she was there. I am Heejin Kwan, communications specialist. For the past 6 months, I've been coordinating with resistance groups throughout council space. Every piece of information you thought was secure has been shared with us. She smiled apologetically. Your own subject species have been our intelligence network. Every ship movement, every military order, every strategic decision has been reported to us within hours. The truth hit the council members like a physical blow. Their entire empire was built on the labor and knowledge of conquered species. Those same species had been watching, learning, and planning for centuries. When the humans arrived, they had not found primitive subjects. They had found a galaxy-wide resistance movement waiting for leadership. You used our own people against us. Prime Node 7 flashed in dim, defeated colors. We used people who wanted to be free, Hyunwoo corrected. They chose to help us because they remembered what life was like before the council. Veltar looked around the table at his fellow council members. For 3,000 years, they had been the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Now they were discovering that their power had been an illusion, built on the cooperation of those they had conquered. What happens if we refuse your terms? He asked quietly. Hyunwoo looked sad for a moment. Then there will be war. Not just between us and you, but between freedom and slavery across the entire galaxy. Your former subjects are ready to fight. We are ready to help them. But there is still a chance for peace, So-young added. You can choose to work with us instead of against us. You can help build something better than the old empire. Jae-young held up her recording device again. I am documenting your response to our terms. What will you tell the galaxy? The council members looked at each other. 3,000 years of absolute power was being challenged by beings they had never even heard of a year ago. Everything they had built was falling apart, and they had to decide what to do next. Outside the Great Hall, more alarms began to ring. More reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The old order was ending, and something new was being born in its place. The question was whether it would be born in peace or in war. The Great Hall erupted into chaos as emergency communications poured in from across the galaxy. Each council member's personal communicator buzzed and flashed with urgent messages. The steady hum of the space station was broken by the sound of voices shouting in different alien languages. Veltar pressed his communicator to his ear, his forearms shaking as he listened. His blue skin turned almost white as the reports came in. Velterra Station is under complete blockade, he announced to the hall. No ships can enter or leave the system. Our main trade hub has been shut down completely. Kethrun's massive fist crushed his communicator as he received his own reports. The hegemony's primary shipyards are dark. All construction has stopped. My military advisors report that the Nexari workers have disappeared from their posts. The Crystal Collective's mining operations in 7 systems have gone offline. Prime Node 7 flashed in rapid, panicked colors. Our energy production has dropped by 60%. Around the table, each council member received similar news. Systems that had been under their control for centuries were suddenly beyond their reach. Trade routes were blocked. Military installations were compromised. Industrial centers had gone silent. The humans stood calmly in the center of the storm. While the most powerful beings in the galaxy panicked around them, they remained perfectly composed. How is this possible? Demanded Admiral Yextar of the Aquatic Federation, water streaming from her gill slits in distress. We have garrison fleets in every system. Where are our defenses? A new human stepped forward from the group. She was small and wore simple clothes, but her eyes held a sharp intelligence that made the council members uncomfortable. I am Subin. Oh, strategic coordination, she said in a quiet voice that somehow carried clearly through the chaos. Your garrison fleets are exactly where they have always been, but they are not fighting us. She activated a small device and the holographic display changed to show live feeds from across the galaxy. Council fleets hung motionless in space while human and rebel ships moved freely around them. Your ship commanders are receiving conflicting orders, Subin explained. Some orders come from your central command, telling them to attack the rebels. Other orders come from sources they trust telling them to stand down. That is impossible, Kethrun growled. Our communication codes are unbreakable. Subin smiled slightly. Your codes were created by the Nexari cryptographers, the same Nexari who have been part of our alliance for months. They know every code, every frequency, every security protocol. More displays appeared showing detailed tactical information that made the council members' worst fears come true. Their own communication networks had been compromised from the beginning. Every order they gave was being intercepted, analyzed, and often countermanded by the resistance. Your fleet commanders are confused, Subin continued. They receive orders to attack rebel positions, but then they receive new orders with proper authentication codes, telling them those positions are friendly. They receive intelligence reports that later turn out to be false. They are paralyzed by uncertainty. Wan Jin Cha, another human strategic analyst, joined the explanation. Meanwhile, our own forces know exactly where your ships are and what they are doing. We have been monitoring your communications for months. Every strategic response you might consider has already been anticipated. The displays shifted to show real-time tactical situations. In system after system, Council fleets were being systematically outmaneuvered by smaller forces that seemed to know their every move. The Zephyrian Third Fleet received orders to protect the Velterra trade station, Wan Jin explained, pointing to one display. But they also received intelligence reports suggesting that human ships were massing for an attack on their homeworld. They chose to return home, leaving the station undefended. The Varanti battle group in the Outer Rim was told to reinforce the shipyards, Subin added. But then they received emergency distress calls from 3 different directions. They split their forces to respond to all of them. None of the distress calls were real. Prime Node 7's crystal body dimmed with despair. You have been playing with us. This entire negotiation was a distraction. No, Ambassador Hyunwoo said firmly. This negotiation is real. We genuinely hoped you would choose peace, but we are not naive enough to enter discussions without being prepared for war. The tactical displays continued to update with devastating news. Council positions throughout the galaxy were being abandoned, surrounded, or captured. But the humans were right. It was not happening through superior firepower. It was happening through superior coordination and intelligence. Your empire has always depended on keeping your subjects isolated from each other, Ara Choi observed. The Kelfari were not allowed to communicate with the Nexari. The Threks were forbidden from trading with the aquatic worlds. You kept them separated so they could not organize against you. But we changed that, Min Ho-yoon added. For the first time in centuries, all of these species are working together. They are sharing information, coordinating their actions, and supporting each other. The displays showed the proof of his words. Kelfari ships were defending Nexari industrial sites. Threx ground forces were protecting aquatic underwater cities. Species that had been enemies for generations were now allies against their common oppressor. This is not just a human military operation, Hyunwoo explained. This is a galaxy-wide liberation movement. We just helped them organize what they already wanted to do. Veltar looked around the table at his fellow council members. Their empire was collapsing not because of human weapons, but because of human ideas. The concept of freedom was spreading faster than any military force could stop it. What do you want from us? He asked in a defeated voice. We want you to choose, So Young Park replied. You can fight this change and watch your worlds burn in a war you cannot win. Or you can join us in building something better. Join you, Kethrun snarled. We are the council. We do not serve others. Then you do not understand what we are offering, Jae Young Seo said calmly. We are not asking you to serve us. We are asking you to serve yourselves and your people in a new way. She gestured to the displays showing the tactical situation. Look at what is happening. Your people are tired of constant military alerts. Your economies are collapsing because trade has been disrupted. Your young people are questioning why they should fight to maintain an empire that brings them nothing but enemies. You could be leaders in a new galactic federation, Hyunwoo offered. Partners instead of rulers. Contributors instead of conquerors. Your knowledge and experience could help build a better future for everyone. Wan Jin checked his tactical displays again. But you need to decide quickly. Every hour you delay, more systems declare their independence. Every day you wait, your position becomes weaker. The council members looked at the real-time reports showing their empire crumbling around them. 3,000 years of absolute power was ending, and they had to choose whether to go down fighting or to help build what came next. Outside the Great Hall, the alarms had stopped. But the silence was somehow more frightening than the noise had been. It was the silence of a galaxy holding its breath, waiting to see whether the future would be born in peace or in war. The humans waited patiently for an answer, but their message was clear. The old order was over, with or without the Council's cooperation. The great hall of Concordia Prime had become strangely quiet. The emergency alarms had stopped, but the tension in the air was so thick it seemed hard to breathe. The council members sat in their chairs like statues, staring at the holographic displays that showed their empire falling apart in real time. Hours had passed since the humans first presented their demands. In that time, the reports had only gotten worse for the council. System after system was declaring independence. Fleets were refusing orders. Entire populations were rising up against their council governors. Speaker Veltar finally broke the silence. His voice was much quieter than it had been at the beginning of the day. "How many systems have we lost?" he asked. Subin-O checked her datapad. "As of 30 minutes ago, 147 systems have declared independence from council rule. Another 63 have expelled their council administrators but have not yet made formal declarations. 210 systems," Veltar repeated slowly, "in less than one day. The numbers will continue to grow," Wan Jin-Cha said matter-of-factly. "This movement has its own momentum now. Each successful rebellion encourages others to try." Prime Node 7 flashed in dim, tired colors. "How did we not see this coming? How could so many of our subjects be planning rebellion without us knowing?" Min Ho-Yun looked sad as he answered. "Because you stopped seeing them as people. They became just workers, just resources, just numbers in your reports. But they never stopped being intelligent beings with their own dreams and hopes." He gestured to the displays showing the rebellion spreading across the galaxy. Every Kelfari miner who dreamed of seeing their homeworld free. Every Nexari engineer who remembered building things for their own people instead of their conquerors. Every Threx farmer who wanted their children to know what freedom felt like. They have been waiting for this day for centuries. Admiral Yextar of the Aquatic Federation spoke for the first time in hours. Water still streamed from her gill slits, but now it seemed more like tears than panic. "My people conquered the deep currents worlds 300 years ago," she said slowly. "We told ourselves it was for their own good. They were always fighting each other. We brought them peace. Did you bring them peace or did you bring them silence?" asked Yunjung Lim, the human legal expert who had been quietly observing the proceedings. I do not know anymore," the Admiral admitted. Yunjung activated her own datapad. "I have been reviewing the legal status of council territories. Under galactic law, conquest does not create permanent ownership of other species. The fact that you have ruled them for centuries does not give you the right to continue ruling them. We have maintained order," Kethron protested, but his voice lacked its earlier strength. "Without the council, there would be chaos and war." "There is already war," Taeho Kim pointed out. He was the human coordinator for humanitarian efforts, and his displays showed a different kind of information. "But look at what kind of war it is." His holographic display showed the ongoing conflicts across the galaxy. But instead of the massive destruction that everyone expected, most of the fighting was surprisingly limited. The Free Kelfari are blockading council trade routes, but they are not attacking civilian vessels, Taeho explained. The Nexari have shut down military production, but they are still maintaining life support systems. The Threx have seized control of agricultural worlds, but they are still feeding the populations. Your former subjects are fighting for freedom, not revenge, Hyunwoo observed. They want to be free, but they do not want to become conquerors themselves. Yoonjung added more legal information. Many of the newly independent systems have already sent messages requesting membership in the proposed Galactic Federation. They want to be part of a larger community, but as equals, not subjects. The council members began to understand that this was not just a military rebellion. It was a complete restructuring of how the galaxy would be governed. The old system of a few powerful species ruling over many weaker ones was being replaced by something entirely different. "What exactly is this Galactic Federation you keep mentioning?" Veltar asked. So Young Park activated a new set of displays. These showed proposed organizational charts and governance structures. "A voluntary association of free species," she explained. "Each member world gets a voice in decisions that affect them. No single species or group of species can make laws for everyone else." "That sounds like chaos," Prime Node 7 flashed weakly. "It sounds like democracy," Jae Young Seo corrected. "Something that has worked well for humans and is now being embraced by many other species." The displays showed examples of how the new system would work. Trade agreements negotiated between equals, mutual defense pacts freely chosen, Scientific cooperation based on shared interests rather than forced labor. But what about security? Admiral Yextar asked. What about maintaining peace between species that have been enemies for centuries? Tejo's humanitarian displays provided the answer. Look at what is happening right now. Kelfari and Nexari forces are working together to protect refugee populations. Threx and aquatic teams are coordinating food distribution to worlds affected by the fighting. Former enemies are becoming allies because they have a common goal. The goal of freedom unites them, Minho added. It turns out that most species fight each other only when they are competing for the attention and resources of their conquerors. When they are free to determine their own futures, they find they have much more in common than they thought. Veltar looked around the table at his fellow council members. Some of them were still angry and defiant. Others looked defeated and broken. A few seemed to be genuinely considering what the humans were offering. What would happen to us? He asked quietly. If we agreed to this federation, what would our role be? Whatever role you choose, Yunwu answered. The Zephyrian people have valuable experience in administration and trade. The Varanti have military expertise that could help with peacekeeping. The Crystal Collective has scientific knowledge that could benefit everyone. You are offering us the chance to contribute rather than control, Unjung clarified. To be part of something larger than yourselves instead of trying to dominate it. The tactical displays updated again, showing that the rebellion had now spread to over 300 systems. The old council empire was effectively finished whether the council members accepted it or not. Some of your people have already made their choice, Subin-O announced. The Zephyrian colonial administration on the Outer Rim has declared independence from the Empire and requested Federation membership. 2 Varanti fleet commanders have defected with their ships. Even some Crystal Collective nodes have broken away from the central authority. The council members realized that the choice was not just being offered to them as leaders. It was being offered to every being in the galaxy, including their own people. The old order is ending, Ambassador Hyunwoo said gently. You can fight against that change and be swept away by it, or you can help shape what comes next. But you cannot stop it. He looked around the table at each council member. We came here hoping for a peaceful transition. That hope is still alive, but it will not last forever. Every hour you delay costs lives and causes suffering. What do you need from us? Veltar asked. A choice, So Young replied simply. Peace or war? Cooperation or destruction? The future or the past? The council members looked at each other one more time. 3,000 years of absolute power was ending, and they had to decide what they wanted their legacy to be. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council stretched like a cathedral of chrome and crystal. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds sat in tiered seats that curved around the central platform. Their voices created a symphony of clicks, whistles, and electronic hums that filled the massive chamber. At the center stood Ambassador Velcros, his silver scales catching the light as he raised all 4 of his arms in triumph. 3 years had passed since the Sol incident. 3 years since the human colonies had been reduced to ash and debris. Velcros remembered that day with satisfaction. The humans had been growing too bold, too aggressive. They expanded into territories without permission. They refused to bow to superior civilizations. Something had to be done. The Krelthani Empire had volunteered for the task. Their fleet was powerful and efficient. Velcros himself had commanded the attack from his flagship. He watched through the viewing screens as the human worlds burned. Mars Base 7, Europa Station, the mining colonies on Titan, all gone in a matter of hours. 15 billion souls extinguished like candles in the wind. The humans had tried to fight back. Their primitive warships launched missiles and fired their crude energy weapons. It was like watching children throw rocks at a tank. The Krelthani shields absorbed everything. Then came the response. Plasma cannons tore through the human vessels like paper. Colony domes cracked and vented atmosphere into the void. Cities on Earth's moon became craters of molten glass. The message was clear. Humanity would learn its place or cease to exist. Within a week, the human government on Earth transmitted their surrender. They signed every document the Council demanded. They gave up all claims to space beyond their own moon. They promised to never build warships again. They would stay quiet and obedient. Now 3 years later, the Council gathered to celebrate. The ceremony was called the Festival of Harmony. Velcros found the name amusing. There was no harmony, only submission. But that was how the galaxy worked. The strong made the rules. The weak followed them or died. The human representatives sat in the lowest tier of seats. There were only 5 of them. They wore simple gray uniforms without decoration. Their faces showed no emotion. Velcros wondered what they were thinking. Did they hate him? Did they dream of revenge? It did not matter. Without their fleets and colonies, humans were nothing, just another broken species among thousands. The ceremony began with speeches from various council members. They talked about peace and cooperation. They praised the wisdom of the council's decisions. Some of the younger species looked uncomfortable when Velcro spoke about the Sol incident. He called it a necessary correction. A lesson in humility. The older species nodded in agreement. They had learned similar lessons long ago. After the speeches came the signing of new treaties. The humans would pay tribute to the council for the next 100 years. They would provide resources and labor. In return, they would be allowed to exist. One of the human representatives, a woman with gray hair and tired eyes, stood and walked to the platform. Her hand shook as she signed the document. Velcro smiled. This was order. This was how it should be. The celebration continued into the evening. Food and drink flowed freely. Delegates mingled and made deals. The humans left early without saying goodbye. No one noticed or cared. They were irrelevant now. Just another defeated race in the vast tapestry of the galaxy. Far from the council chambers, in a monitoring station on the edge of known space, a junior technician named Thrix watched his screens with growing concern. Thrix was a Viridian, a species known for their attention to detail. His compound eyes could detect patterns that others missed. For the past hour, something had been bothering him. There was an energy signature. It was faint, barely visible against the background radiation of deep space, but it was moving. And it was massive. Thrix ran the calculations 3 times. The object was enormous, larger than any ship in the Council database. It was also heading toward Council space at a steady pace. Thrix reported the anomaly to his supervisor. The supervisor dismissed it as a sensor glitch. Deep space was full of strange readings. It was probably just a rogue asteroid or a cloud of cosmic dust. Thrix should stop wasting time and focus on real threats. Thrix returned to his station, but he could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. He enhanced the image, pushing his equipment to its limits. For just a moment, the object became clear. It was not an asteroid. It was a ship. The largest ship Thrix had ever seen. Its hull was dark and angular, covered in what looked like weapon emplacements. Then the image vanished as the object disappeared from his sensors entirely. Thrix felt his blood run cold. Ships that size did not exist, and ships that could hide from military sensors definitely did not exist. He tried to track it again, but the signature was gone. Whatever it was, it had vanished into the darkness between stars. But Thrix knew it was still out there. Still moving. Still coming. In his luxurious quarters on the council station, Velcro celebrated with his senior officers. They drank Krelthani fire wine and told stories of past victories. The humans were forgotten. The galaxy was at peace. Everything was as it should be. Velcros raised his glass and made a toast to continued prosperity and the strength of the Krelthani Empire. None of them knew that in the darkness of space, something was watching. Something that had been building and waiting for 3 long years. Something that remembered every death, every destroyed colony, every humiliation. The humans had stayed quiet just as the council demanded. But silence did not mean acceptance, and the time for silence was about to end. The disappearances started small. A patrol ship here, a cargo vessel there. The Krelthani Empire controlled hundreds of systems, and ships went missing all the time. Pirates, navigation errors, mechanical failures. It happened. But after 3 months, the pattern became impossible to ignore. 47 ships had vanished without a trace. No distress signals. No debris fields. No survivors. They simply stopped responding to communications and were never seen again. The attacks, if they were attacks, were precise and clean. Military intelligence analyzed the locations and found something disturbing. All the disappearances occurred along the borders of former human territory. Commander Brell stood in the war room of the Krelthani military headquarters. He was a veteran of 30 campaigns and had never seen anything like this. The holographic display showed the missing ship locations as red dots. They formed a pattern almost like a net being drawn tighter. Brell's instincts told him this was no coincidence. He presented his findings to the High Command. Some agreed with his concerns. Others laughed. The humans! Impossible. They had no ships, no technology, no resources. Their military had been destroyed 3 years ago. What remained of humanity lived in poverty on reservation worlds, doing menial labor for their council masters. They were broken, defeated, harmless. On one of those reservation worlds, in a settlement called New Hope, humans lived in prefabricated shelters that leaked when it rained. They worked 12-hour shifts in factories owned by other species. Their children went to schools where they learned that humanity had been arrogant and deserved its punishment. The council representatives watched everything, making sure the humans stayed compliant and defeated. But in the darkness between the shelters, away from the cameras and guards, something else was happening. Small groups gathered in secret. They spoke in whispers about hope and resistance. They passed around forbidden messages that came from somewhere in deep space. The messages contained coordinates and instructions. They said that humanity was not finished. Not yet. The messenger was a woman who never gave her name. She appeared without warning and vanished just as quickly. She moved between settlements like a ghost. Some said she was military, one of the officers who refused to surrender. Others claimed she was just a legend, a story people told themselves to keep hope alive. But the coordinates she provided were real, and they led to supply caches hidden in abandoned stations. 3 years earlier, when the Krelthani fleet attacked, not all of humanity's military surrendered. Admiral Sarah Chen commanded the 3rd Deep Space Fleet, stationed beyond the outer colonies. When she received the surrender order from Earth, she made a choice. She refused. Her crew, 2,000 men and women, voted to follow her. They would not surrender. They would not forget. Chen led her fleet into the deepest parts of space, far beyond the reach of Council sensors. They found abandoned asteroid fields and dead systems where no one ever looked. There, in the darkness and silence, they began to build. Every ship in the fleet was cannibalized for materials. Engineers worked around the clock. Resources were stretched to breaking point. But slowly, something new took shape. It was not just one ship they built. Chen knew one ship would not be enough. They needed a fleet, but humanity had nothing left. So they made do with what they had. 5 ships began to take form in those hidden construction yards. They were ugly, brutal things built from salvage and desperation. But they were also powerful in ways the Council had never imagined. The flagship, which Chen named Reckoning, was the largest. 5 kilometers of pure aggression, powered by experimental antimatter reactors that human scientists had been developing in secret before the war. The weapon systems broke every Council treaty and law. Rail cannons that could punch through any known shielding. Missile pods carrying warheads that could crack a planet. Point defense systems so dense that nothing could get through. The crew called it a flying fortress. Chen called it a promise that humanity would not stay quiet forever, a promise that those who died would be remembered and avenged. Every person aboard had lost someone in the attacks. Parents, children, friends, lovers. They worked with the fury of the bereaved and the determination of the damned. Back in Council space, the disappearances continued. A Krelthani supply convoy vanished while traveling through the outer rim. This time there was a sensor reading, just for a fraction of a second. A massive energy signature appeared and then disappeared. The sensor officer who detected it ran the analysis 17 times, certain there was a mistake. But the data was clear. Something huge had been there. The report reached Commander Brell within hours. He took it directly to the Emperor himself. The Emperor listened but remained unconvinced. Even if the humans had built something which was impossible, they would not dare attack the Krelthani Empire. They had seen what happened to those who opposed the Council. They had watched their worlds burn. No species was that foolish, but the Emperor agreed to increase patrols along the border. More ships were deployed. Sensor arrays were upgraded. If something was out there, they would find it and destroy it. The Krelthani military was the most powerful force in the galaxy. They had crushed countless rebellions. One more would make no difference. On the hidden construction station, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Reckoning and watched the final systems come online. The ship hummed with power. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. They were ready. 3 years of work, 3 years of sacrifice, 3 years of preparation. Now it was time. Chen opened a channel to the other 4 ships in her small fleet. Their captains appeared on her screen. Each one had their own story of loss and survival. Each one had chosen to fight rather than surrender. They looked to her for orders, and she did not disappoint them. The first phase was complete. The Krelthani knew something was coming. Now it was time to make them afraid. The message arrived simultaneously on every Krelthani military frequency in known space. It overrode encryption, bypassed firewalls, and burned itself into the memory of every receiver. Communications officers across the Empire stared at their screens in shock. The message was simple and terrifying in its simplicity. A countdown clock, 72 hours. Below it, a set of coordinates pointing to a neutral system on the edge of Council space. Nothing else. No demands. No explanation. Just the clock, ticking down with mechanical precision. The implication was clear. Someone was issuing a challenge. Someone wanted a fight. The Krelthani High Command erupted into chaos. Half the officers insisted it was a human trick, a desperate bluff from a broken species. The other half demanded immediate mobilization. The Emperor called an emergency council session. Representatives from a dozen species gathered to view the message and debate its meaning. Most agreed it had to be the humans. No other species would dare. Commander Brell compiled every piece of intelligence they had: 47 missing ships, 12 destroyed outposts along the border, strange energy signatures detected and lost, rumors from the human settlements about messages from deep space. The pattern was undeniable. The humans had been planning something for 3 years. Now they were ready to reveal it. The Emperor addressed the council with confidence that he did not entirely feel. The Krelthani Empire would respond to this insult with overwhelming force. The Third Fleet would deploy to the coordinates and deal with whatever pitiful force the humans had assembled. It would be a demonstration of power, a reminder to all species of what happened to those who challenged the council. The vote was unanimous. The humans would be taught another lesson. The Third Fleet was legendary in Krelthani military history. 200 warships, including 3 massive dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying a planet. The fleet had crushed rebellions on 17 worlds. It had never been defeated. Fleet Admiral Korvax, a veteran of 40 years, took command personally. He viewed this deployment as a formality, a waste of resources to swat an insect. As the countdown continued, the galaxy watched with mixed feelings. Some species secretly hoped the humans would put up a fight, even if it was futile. They remembered their own defeats at council hands. Others bet on how quickly the Krelthani would end it. Most agreed it would be over in minutes. The humans had nothing that could threaten a council fleet. Aboard the Reckoning, Admiral Chen gathered her crew in the main hangar. 2,000 faces looked up at her, faces marked by 3 years of hard work and harder memories. She did not give them a rousing speech. She did not need to. They all knew why they were here. They had all lost everything. Now they would make the galaxy remember that humanity could still bite back. Chen explained the plan with brutal honesty. They were outnumbered 100 to 1. They had no support, no reinforcements, no backup. If they failed, humanity would be erased from history. But if they succeeded, if they could show the galaxy that humans would not stay quiet, then maybe the survivors on the reservation worlds would have hope. Maybe the next generation would have a future. The crew voted. It was unanimous. They would fight. The Reckoning powered up its massive engines and began the journey to the coordinates. The other 4 ships of the fleet followed in formation. They ran silent, using experimental stealth systems that bent sensor waves around them. To the rest of the galaxy, they were invisible ghosts moving through the darkness. The countdown reached 0. The neutral system of Kepler 442 became the most watched location in the galaxy. Council observers set up monitoring stations at a safe distance. News crews from every major species aimed their cameras at the coordinates. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. Everyone expected the same outcome. The Krelthani would win. The humans would die. That was how it always went. The Third Fleet arrived in perfect formation, a display of military precision and overwhelming force. 200 ships spread across space like a steel curtain. The dreadnoughts took point positions, their weapons already charging. Fleet Admiral Korvax scanned the area with every sensor at his disposal. Nothing. The system was empty. The humans had not shown up. Then the Reckoning dropped out of stealth, appearing as if materializing from nothing. It hung in space alone, dwarfing even the Krelthani dreadnoughts. 5 kilometers of dark metal and weapon ports. The council observers gasped. The news crews zoomed in, unable to believe what they were seeing. The humans had built a monster. Admiral Chen opened a broadcast on all frequencies. Her voice was calm and cold. She did not shout or threaten. She simply stated facts. The Council had believed humanity would stay quiet. They believed fear would silence them. They believed wrong. The Krelthani had killed 15 billion people. They had destroyed colonies and homes. They had tried to break the human spirit. Now they would learn the cost of that mistake. Fleet Admiral Korvax responded with practiced arrogance. 1 ship against 200. The odds were laughable. He offered Chen one chance to surrender. Her crew would be taken prisoner and tried for piracy. The ship would be destroyed. If she refused, they would all die here and now. The choice was hers. He gave her 5 minutes to decide. Chen did not use the 5 minutes. Her response was to open fire. The Reckoning unleashed every weapon it had in one devastating salvo. Rail cannons fired slugs at relativistic speeds that punched through shields like they were not there. Missile pods released swarms of warheads that twisted and turned to avoid point defense. Energy weapons carved through armor plating. The attack was so sudden and so violent that the Krelthani fleet barely had time to react. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the impossible happened. The Reckoning did not die. Instead, it tore into the Third Fleet with terrifying efficiency. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Others lost power and drifted dead in space. The dreadnoughts focused their fire on the human ship, but it moved with surprising agility for its size, dodging and weaving through the barrage, and it kept shooting. The battle lasted 6 hours. 6 hours that changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. The Reckoning fought like nothing the Council had ever seen. It used tactics that seemed reckless but proved brutally effective. The ship would charge straight into formations, forcing the Krelthani vessels to scatter or risk collision. At close range, the human weapons were devastating. Rail cannons fired continuously, each shot crossing the distance in a fraction of a second. Krelthani shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, did nothing against solid projectiles moving at a percentage of light speed. The slugs tore through hulls and detonated inside ships, ripping them apart from within. Dozens of vessels died this way, their crews never knowing what hit them. The missile swarms proved equally deadly. Each warhead contained electronic warfare systems that confused targeting computers. The Krelthani point defense systems fired wildly, hitting their own ships as often as the missiles. When the warheads did connect, they released electromagnetic pulses that cascaded through entire formations. Ships lost power, drifted helpless, and became easy targets for follow-up strikes. Fleet Admiral Korvax tried every standard tactic in the Krelthani playbook. He ordered concentrated fire on single targets. He attempted flanking maneuvers. He even sacrificed smaller ships to create firing lanes for the dreadnoughts. Nothing worked. The Reckoning seemed to anticipate every move, responding with counter-tactics that turned Krelthani strengths into weaknesses. The human ship was not invulnerable. It took damage, plenty of it. Armor plating was blown away in chunks. Secondary systems failed. Fires broke out in multiple sections. But the Reckoning kept fighting. Its crew worked with desperate efficiency, routing power, sealing breaches, and keeping the weapons firing. They had trained for 3 years for this moment. They would not stop. Admiral Chen stood on her bridge, calling out orders with calm precision. Her tactical officer fed her information on enemy positions. Her weapons officer coordinated the firing patterns. Her engineering chief kept the damaged systems running through sheer willpower and creative improvisation. They worked as one unit, every person knowing their role perfectly. The Council observers watched in growing horror. This was not supposed to be possible. A single human ship was defeating the legendary Third Fleet. The news crews broadcast every moment to billions of viewers across the galaxy. Some species cheered quietly in their homes. Others felt fear creeping into their hearts. If the humans could do this, what did it mean for the rest of them? One of the Krelthani dreadnoughts made a fatal mistake. Its commander, desperate to prove his worth, ordered a direct assault on the Reckoning. The massive ship accelerated toward the human vessel, intending to use its superior size to ram and destroy. Chen saw the move coming. She waited until the last possible second, then fired every forward weapon simultaneously while executing a violent roll. The dreadnought could not maneuver quickly enough. Rail cannon rounds tore through its bridge. Missiles detonated along its spine. Energy weapons cut deep into its reactor core. The ship broke in half, spilling atmosphere and debris across thousands of kilometers. Thousands of Krelthani warriors died in an instant. The explosion lit up the battlefield like a second sun. Fleet Admiral Korvax finally understood what he was facing. This was not a desperate last stand. This was a calculated assault by warriors who had nothing left to lose. The humans were not trying to survive. They were trying to send a message written in fire and blood, and they were succeeding. The Third Fleet was being destroyed. Korvax made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He ordered a full retreat. The surviving ships of the Third Fleet broke formation and fled. Some did not make it, picked off by the reckoning as they tried to escape. Others jumped to faster-than-light speeds with their shields still down, suffering damage in their panic. Of the 200 ships that entered the system, only 63 escaped. But Chen did not let them all go. She deliberately left one ship intact, a heavy cruiser that had wisely stayed at the edge of the battle. She opened a channel to its captain. Her face appeared on screens throughout the surviving Crelthani fleet. She looked tired, but her eyes burned with cold fire. She had a message to deliver, and every species in the galaxy needed to hear it. Chen spoke directly to the Crelthani captain, but her words were meant for the entire council. She told them that humanity remembered. Every colony burned, every life lost, every child who died screaming in the void. They remembered, and they would never forget. The council had believed that fear would make humanity submit. They had believed that overwhelming force would break the human spirit. They were wrong. Humanity had stayed quiet for 3 years, not out of fear but out of necessity. They needed time to build, to prepare, to plan. Now they were ready. The reckoning was just the beginning. Chen told the Crelthani captain to return to his empire and tell them what he had seen. Tell them that the humans were coming. Tell them that every death would be answered. Tell them that silence was over. The surviving Crelthani ships jumped away, carrying their message of defeat. The reckoning remained in the Kepler 4 and 42 system for another hour, making repairs and recovering what resources it could from the wreckage. The council observers watched, not daring to approach. News crews broadcast footage of the human ship moving slowly through the debris field of its enemies. Finally, the reckoning activated its stealth systems and vanished. One moment it was there, solid and real. The next moment it was gone, as if it had never existed. But the wreckage remained. The burning hulls, the floating debris, the frozen bodies spinning in the void, all of it testified to what had happened here. The galaxy would never be the same. On the reservation worlds, the humans gathered around screens and watched the broadcasts in stunned silence. They had prayed for this moment but never truly believed it would come. Now they saw it with their own eyes. One human ship had destroyed a council fleet. It was impossible, but it had happened. For the first time in 3 years, they felt something other than despair. They felt hope. The Galactic Council chambers erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted over each other in a dozen languages. Some demanded immediate action against humanity. Others called for negotiations. A few quietly began calculating how to protect their own interests if the power balance had truly shifted. The news from Kepler 442 had shaken the foundation of galactic order. Ambassador Velcro stood frozen, watching the footage replay on every screen. The Third Fleet destroyed, the reckoning vanishing into the darkness like a ghost. This was impossible. The humans should have been broken. Instead, they had built weapons that made Council technology look primitive. How had this happened? Where had they found the resources? Species that had participated in the destruction of Earth's colonies now begged the Crelthani Empire for protection. They feared human retaliation. They feared their own populations might see this as an opportunity to rebel. If humanity could stand against the Council, why not others? The carefully maintained order was beginning to crack. Fear spread like a virus. The Crelthani Emperor addressed the Council with barely controlled rage. The Third Fleet's defeat was a temporary setback, nothing more. The Empire would mobilize its entire armada. Over 1,000 warships would hunt down and destroy every human vessel. The species would be exterminated completely this time. No survivors, no mercy. The vote passed with a narrow majority, but not every species agreed. The Viridians, a younger civilization that had suffered their own pacification 30 years earlier, sent a secret transmission. It was encrypted with codes so complex that only the most advanced human computers could break them. The message contained detailed intelligence about Crelthani fleet movements, supply lines, and strategic weaknesses. The Viridians remembered their own defeat. They saw in humanity a chance for justice. Then came the second shock. The reckoning was not alone. 4 more human warships emerged from deep space at strategic points across Krelthani territory. They were smaller than the flagship, but no less deadly. Each one had been built with the same desperate ingenuity and savage purpose. Each one carried a crew that had spent 3 years preparing for war. The ships had names that told their story: Retribution, Defiance, Remembrance, Fury, and the flagship, Reckoning. Together they formed a fleet that should not exist, but did. Admiral Chen had not spent 3 years building one ship. She had built an answer to the question the Council thought they had settled. What happens when you try to erase humanity? The human fleet began a campaign that military historians would study for generations. They did not target civilians or population centers. Every strike was aimed at military installations, supply depots, and shipyards. The attacks were surgical and devastating. Within 2 weeks, the Krelthani military infrastructure across 3 sectors was in ruins. The humans used tactics that the Council had never encountered. They appeared out of nowhere, struck with overwhelming force, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Their stealth technology was decades ahead of anything in the Council database. Their weapons seemed designed specifically to counter every defensive system the Krelthani possessed. Commander Brel, now promoted to Supreme Commander of all Krelthani forces, studied the pattern of attacks and realized something disturbing. The humans were not just destroying targets. They were sending a message. Every installation they hit had been involved in the original assault on Earth's colonies. Every officer they killed had blood on their hands. This was not random. This was justice. The Council fractured further. Some species began secret peace overtures to humanity, trying to distance themselves from the Krelthani Empire. Others doubled down on the war effort, fearing what would happen if the humans won. A few remained neutral, watching and waiting to see which side would prevail. The galaxy was dividing. The Viridians went further than just providing intelligence. Their representative, a young diplomat named Aerith, made a public statement that shocked everyone. She declared that her people supported humanity's right to defend itself. She called the destruction of Earth's colonies a crime against civilization. She offered sanctuary to human refugees and military support if needed. The Krelthani Emperor threatened the Viridians with the same fate as humanity. Aerith's response was broadcast across all channels. She stood before the Council and spoke with a quiet dignity that cut deeper than any weapon. Her people had also been pacified by the Council. They had been told to stay quiet. They had suffered and survived. Now they saw in humanity's struggle a chance to say that the old order was wrong. Other species began to whisper similar thoughts. If the Viridians could stand with humanity, perhaps they could too. The Council's power had always been based on fear and overwhelming force. But the humans had shown that even overwhelming force could be defeated. The impossible had happened once. Maybe it could happen again. Admiral Chen received the Viridian intelligence and immediately adapted her strategy. The Krelthani Armada was gathering at a staging point near their homeworld. Over 1,000 ships, the largest military force ever assembled. The Emperor planned to use it to crush humanity in one final overwhelming assault. But the humans now knew exactly where the fleet was and when it would be vulnerable. Chen called a meeting with her fellow captains. They discussed the plan in detail. It was insane, desperate, and probably suicidal. They would attack the Krelthani homeworld itself. Not to destroy it, but to prove a point. To show that humanity could reach the heart of the Empire if they chose. To demonstrate that if the Krelthani wanted total war, they would get it. And they would lose. The captains voted. It was unanimous. They had come too far to stop now. They had lost too much to turn back. The human fleet set course for the Krelthani homeworld, preparing for the battle that would decide the fate of their species. Behind them, across the galaxy, humans on the reservation worlds watched and waited. They could not fight, but they could hope. And hope was something they had not felt in 3 long years. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Krelthani home system. Before them lay the beating heart of the Empire, a world of gleaming cities and orbital platforms, shipyards that stretched for thousands of kilometers, defense stations that bristled with weapons, and between the humans and their target, the entire Krelthani Armada, 1,000 ships arrayed in defensive formations that had been perfected over centuries. Supreme Commander Brel stood on the bridge of the Imperial flagship and watched the human ships appear on his sensors. 5 vessels against 1,000. The odds were absurd. Even with their advanced technology, the humans could not win this battle. But Brel felt no satisfaction. He had studied these humans for months now. They did not do anything without purpose. This was not a suicide mission. This was something else. Admiral Chen opened a broadcast to every ship in the system, every station and every receiver on the planet below. The Krelthani people deserved to see this. They deserved to know what their empire had done and what it had cost them. She began with a simple statement. 3 years ago, the Krelthani fleet destroyed Earth's colonies. 15 billion people died. Men, women, children. Entire families erased in hours. Chen played footage from the attacks. Not propaganda or edited clips, but raw recordings from the colonies as they died. Children crying for their parents. People burning in their homes. Ships exploding with families still aboard. The images were brutal and unforgiving. Billions of Krelthani citizens watched in horror. Many had never seen this footage. Their government had told them the humans were aggressors who needed to be stopped. Now they saw the truth. Then Chen made her point clear. The human fleet could destroy the Krelthani homeworld right now. Their weapons were powerful enough. Their targeting systems precise enough. They could turn the planet below into a burning wasteland, just as the Krelthani had done to Earth's colonies. But they would not, because humanity was not like the Krelthani Empire. Humanity remembered what it meant to be civilized. The human fleet positioned its weapons on military targets only. Shipyards, defense platforms, command centers, not cities, not civilian areas, not homes where families lived. Chen gave the Krelthani Emperor a choice: surrender now and face justice for war crimes, or watch as his military infrastructure burned and his empire crumbled from within. She gave him 10 minutes to decide. The Emperor refused. He ordered the Armada to attack. Pride and rage overruled wisdom. The 1,000 ships began their advance, weapons charging, shields at maximum. The human fleet did not move. They held position, waiting. Brel watched his sensors and felt cold certainty settle over him. The humans wanted the Krelthani to attack. They had planned for this. The battle began with the same fury as Kepler 442, but on a far larger scale. The human ships used every tactic they had learned, every weapon they possessed. 3 of the 5 vessels were destroyed within the first hour, their crews fighting to the last breath. But they took dozens of Krelthani ships with them. And the Reckoning and Defiance continued to fight with desperate skill. On the planet below, something unexpected happened. Young Krelthani military officers, those who had not participated in the original attack on Earth, began to question their orders. They watched the battle unfold. They saw the human ships dying but refusing to target civilian areas. They remembered Chen's broadcast and the footage of burning colonies. They realized they were fighting for an empire that had committed genocide. A group of ship captains made a decision that would echo through history. They refused to continue the attack. They broke formation and withdrew their ships from the battle. Others followed. Within minutes, a quarter of the Krelthani Armada had stopped fighting. The Emperor screamed orders that were ignored. The military was fracturing before his eyes. Supreme Commander Brel made his own choice. He sent a message to his fellow commanders, bypassing the Emperor entirely. Enough blood had been spilled, enough destruction. The Empire had started this war with genocide. It would end it with honor, or what little honor remained. Brel ordered his ship to stand down. He requested a ceasefire and negotiations. The Emperor, isolated in his palace, refused to accept defeat. He tried to order the arrest of Brel and the other mutinous officers. But the military had made its decision. Junior officers stormed the palace and took the Emperor into custody. The reign of terror was over. The Krelthani Empire would face justice for its crimes. Admiral Chen received the ceasefire request aboard the burning wreck of the Reckoning. Her ship was dying, systems failing one by one. Half her crew was dead or wounded. But they had accomplished the impossible. They had brought the Krelthani Empire to its knees, not through genocide or terrorism, but through the simple act of refusing to stay quiet. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. For the first time in its history, the Council was forced to address war crimes committed by its own members. Representatives from dozens of species demanded accountability. The Viridians led the charge, supported by others who had suffered similar fates. Trials would be held. Those responsible would face justice. A new treaty was drafted, not one of submission and tribute, but one of mutual respect. Humanity would be recognized as a sovereign species with full rights. The survivors on the reservation worlds would be freed and allowed to rebuild. Reparations would be paid for the destroyed colonies. The process would take years, maybe decades, but it would happen. The galaxy learned a lesson that day, a lesson written in the wreckage of fleets and the blood of warriors. You could destroy a species' ships, you could take their worlds, you could kill their people, but you could not silence their voice. You could not break their spirit. And if you tried, they would rise from the ashes with fury and determination that no force in the galaxy could stop. Months later, Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the memorial station, built at the location where Earth's moon once orbited. The moon itself was still scarred from the attacks, but life was returning. Humans were returning. She placed a wreath in the observation window, watching it float in the void. Behind her, other survivors did the same. Each wreath represented someone lost, someone remembered. Chen whispered words that only she could hear. She told them it was over. The galaxy knew now. They would never forget. Humanity had paid a terrible price for that knowledge, but it was done. The dead could rest. The living could rebuild. And the next time someone tried to make humanity stay quiet, they would remember what happened when silence finally broke. The camera pulled back from the memorial station, showing the construction yards beyond. New ships were being built. Not warships this time, but exploration vessels and colony ships. Humanity was looking outward again, not with fear or aggression, but with hope. The scars would remain forever. The memories would never fade. But humanity would endure. They always had. They always would.